Hello and welcome to a brand new channel brought to you by Dorkdom Gaming. On this channel we're going to be going over every unit and together we will discover, do they suck? We will be focusing on match play and how viable each unit is in a tournament. So let's begin. Do Tzeentch Daemons suck? Alright, so the first thing we're going to talk about is the Battalion. The Battalion's name is the Change Host of Tzeentch. Now what it consists of is one Lord of Change and 8 more units chosen by you. They can either be a Whore Hero, Pink Whores, Flamers, Exalted Flamers, Screamers, or Burning Chariots. Now, the actual battalion itself cost 60 points to take. And the ability is actually quite unique. What it does is basically, you have your Lord of Change, and any 2 units that are within 27 inches may swap places. So you take one model from each unit and have them swap places on the battlefield. Then remove all other models from the 2 units. And then you set them back up, and as long as you stay within 9 inches of the swapped model, you have a lot of flexibility in terms of moving. Now, if there are 9 or more units in the battalion at the start of the hero phase, then you can select 2 different pairs of units to swap places. This is an incredible ability. The next battalion is called the Demon Cohort of Tzeentch. Now it consists of a Lord of Change or a Tzeentch Demon Prince. The next unit needs to be either a Herald of Tzeentch or a Herald of Tzeentch on a disc or a Herald of Tzeentch on a Burning Chariot. The next 3 units have to be Pink Whores, and the last unit has to be either a unit of Flamers, a Burning Chariots, or the Tzeentch Screamers. Now the abilities of this unit is each caster in this battalion can cast 1 additional spell, and the last ability is after your enemy killed a whole unit, you roll a dice. On a roll of a 6, that unit comes back to life anywhere on the table as long as it's 9 inches away from enemy, and the battalion only costs 120 points. The first war scroll we're going to talk about is the Pink Whores of Tzeentch. They move 5, they have a 5-up save, they have 10 bravery, and 1 wound. They shoot 18 inches with 1 attack, they hit on 4s, they wound on 4s with no rend with 1 damage. In combat, they're not that great. They only have a 1-inch range with 1 attack. They hit on 5s, they wound on 4s, no rend, 1 damage. Their champion gets 2 attacks when they shoot versus 1. Their banner, when you take your battle shock test with that unit and you roll a 1, you regain D6 models. With your musician or hornblower, all enemy units within 6 inches must re-roll 1 when they take their battle shock test. One of the abilities is if you have 20 or more models in the whore block, you get +1 to hit, so you hit on 3s, which is pretty good. If you have a whore hero within 9 inches, you can add 1 to your casting rolls because a unit of whores can cast either a Mystic Shield or Arcane Bolt. Also, the casters know Summon Pink Whore, which goes off on a 6, and it basically creates a unit of 10 Pink Whores within 18 inches, but you gotta be outside of 9 inches from an enemy. If you roll an 11 or more, you get a unit of 20 Pink Whores. The unit overall is okay. I've used it a couple of times. Wasn't making it break it. I mean, it's average. Flamers of Tzeentch. Move 9, 5-up save, 10 bravery, 2 wounds. Warp fire. Now this is awesome. 18-inch range, 3 attacks. They hit on 4s, they wound on 3s. There is no rend, but they do D3 damage. That's insane. In combat, they gotta suck. 1-inch range, 2 attacks, hit on 5s, wound on 3s, no rend, 1 damage. Don't get them in combat. They can fly. The champion has 4 shots instead of 3. Now this is kind of cool. Roll a dice at the end of each shooting phase for each unit that suffered wounds from flamers. On a roll of a 4-up, they suffer D3 mortal wounds. On a roll of a 1, that unit gets to heal D3 wounds. They don't resurrect models, they just heal 1. They only heal D3 wounds, they don't resurrect models. That's very important to remember. Now here's something that's really awesome. As long as you have a whore hero within 9 inches, roll a dice each time one of these models is slain. On a roll of a 6, you gain back 2 flamers, but of course you can't go above your starting wound count. But I can't tell you how many times I've played this where people just got so mad because it just kept on rolling 6s and the unit won't die. Now also your casters know the Summon Flamers of Tzeentch spell. On a roll of a 6, you gain 3 flamers within 18 inches of the caster, but outside of 9 inches away from an enemy. If you roll 11 or more, you gain 6 flamers as each. Now, these models are 200 points for 3. Very expensive. But I will tell you, I've played them a ton, and they're incredible. They're very strong. On paper, I'm just like, eh. But in actual battles, you have to deal with them. They're awesome. Got to try them out. Exalted Flamers of Tzeentch. 120 points, you only get one model. They move 9 inches, 5 up save, bravery 10, but they have 4 wounds. Warp fire 18 inches with 6 attacks, hit on 4s, wound on 3s, no rend D3 damage. Very strong at shooting. They suck in combat. 2-inch range, 4 attacks, 5s to hit, 3s to wound, no rend 1 damage. They fly. But here's that cool ability. Roll a dice each time a unit suffers a wound. On a 4-up, they take D3 mortal wounds. On a roll of 1, they heal D3 wounds. They know that your wizards will know the summon Exalted Flamer. On a value of a 6, you gain 1 Exalted Flamer. On 11, you gain 3 Exalted Flamers. Now, I haven't really played with these models too much because I like the regular Flamers more due to some of their abilities, but these guys are not bad. For 120 points, you should give them a try. Screamers of Tzeentch. They move 16 inches, a 5-up save, bravery 10 with 3 wounds. Their attack has a 1-inch range with 3 attacks, hit on 4s, wound on 3s, no rend, 1 damage. But if they hit a monster in combat, they do D3 damage. This model does fly. Also, for every screamer that moves over an enemy unit, you roll a dice. On a roll of a 6, that unit suffers a mortal wound. Now, here's a cool ability. If you have a horror hero within 9 inches of a screamer unit, and if enemies decide to target your screamers, for every hit roll of a 6, your opponent treats it as a hit roll of a 1. Also, your casters know the Summon Screamer spell. Goes off on a 6, you get 3 screamers within 18 inches of the caster, outside of 9 inches from an enemy. If you roll an 11, you get 6 screamers instead. I haven't used this unit, so I'm not really sure how good it is. On paper, I'm like, there are better units. But again, let me know if you use this unit and how successful it is in the comments. Burning Chariots of Tzeentch. They move 14 inches. They have a 5-up save with bravery 10 and 6 wounds. They have the Exalted Flamer on top, so he has an 18-inch range attack with 6 attacks, hit on 4s, wound on 3s, no rend, D3 damage. Then it also has a 2-inch range for melee attacks with 4 attacks, hit on 5s, wound on 3s, no rend, 1 damage. Another melee attack with a 1-inch range with 3 attacks, hit on 5s, wound on 5s, no rend, 1 damage. And then those screamers have an attack, 1-inch range, 6 attacks, hit on 4s, wound on 3s, no rend, 1 damage. But against monsters, the screamers do D3 damage. Now this chariot does fly, and also with the Exalted Flamer on top, he has a cool ability where if a model suffers a wound, on a 4-up, they take D3 more mortal wounds. On a roll of a 1, they heal D3 wounds. Also, this Burning Chariot, if it moves over an enemy unit, on a roll of a 4, that model also takes D3 more mortal wounds. Also, all your characters know the Summon Burning Chariot spell. On a roll of an 8, they get a chariot within 18 inches, but outside of 9 inches from an enemy. I haven't used this model yet, but it seems like it could be pretty good. It's definitely not the best. I definitely don't think it's the worst, and I think it looks pretty cool on the table. The next war scroll is a Herald of Tzeentch on a Burning Chariot. It moves 14 inches with a 5-up save, bravery 10, and 8 wounds. It has to pick between 2 melee attacks. One is a 2-inch range, 1 attack, hits on 4s, wounds on 3s, -1 rend, does D3 damage. The other one is a 1-inch range with 2 attacks, hits on 4s, wounds on 4s, no rend, 1 damage. The Screamers have a 1-inch range, 6 attacks, hits on 4s, wounds on 3s, no rend, does 1 damage, but against monsters it does D3. This model does fly. Also, once per game it may roll 3 dice versus 2 when casting a spell. If this model ever flies over top of an enemy unit, you roll a dice. On a roll of a 4-up, it does D3 mortal wounds. This model can cast 3 different spells: Arcane Bolt, Mystic Shield, and the Firestorm spell. Now, the Firestorm spell is a casting value of 9, and it affects all enemy units within 9 inches. On a roll of a 4-up, it does D3 mortal wounds to that unit. Also, your casters know the Summon Herald of Tzeentch on a Burning Chariot. Casting value of a 7. You can place a chariot within 18 inches, 9 inches away from enemy model. Now, for me, this model costs 200 points. I'm not a fan of it, only because it doesn't really do too much unless you're extremely close. I'd much prefer the 160-point Herald or the Exalted Flamer on top of the Burning Chariot, which that's more guaranteed damage. So I would have to say this model does suck. The next war scroll is a Herald of Tzeentch. Herald of Tzeentch has a movement of 5 with a 5-up save, bravery 10, and 5 wounds. It has a shooting attack that's 18 inches, 2 attacks, hits on 4s, wound on 4s, no rend, 1 damage. Close combat, you have to pick between 2. Either a 2-inch range with 1 attack, hits on 4s, wounds on 3s, -1 to their save, or -1 rend, and does D3 damage, or they would pick the 1-inch range, 2 attacks, hits on 4s, wounds on 4s, no rend, with 1 damage. The Herald of Tzeentch Once per game, they roll 3 dice instead of 2. Also, if he rolls over a 9 when casting a spell, he can cast an additional spell, but it has to be a different spell, of course. He knows 3 spells, the Arcane Bolt, Mystic Shield, and the Pink Fire of Tzeentch. Now, the Pink Fire of Tzeentch goes off on a 9, and it's pick a visible enemy unit within 18 inches, and that unit suffers D6 mortal wounds. Also, your heroes will know the Summon Herald of Tzeentch, which goes off on a 5, and you can place a Herald of Tzeentch within 18 inches, 9 inches away from an enemy model. Now, I have used this model many times, and it's awesome. For 120 points, you can do D6 mortal wounds, and that's really, really powerful. It makes it to it's a small threat for somebody. Plus, it does a little shooting attack, so I highly recommend this unit. The next War Scroll is the Changeling. Movement 5, 5 up save, Bravery 10, and 5 wounds. He has a melee weapon with a 2-inch range, 1 attack, hits on 4s, wounds on 3s, -1 rend, and does D3 damage. His ability is quite unique. At the start of the battle, you can set up the Changeling in your opponent's territory as though he was part of their army. Enemy units treat him as part of their own army. They can move within 3 inches of him, but cannot target him with spells or attacks, and so on. If he attacks or casts or unbinds a spell or is within 3 inches of an enemy hero in your opponent's hero phase, he is revealed, and this ability no longer has an effect. Until the Changeling is revealed, you can pick one enemy unit within 9 inches of the Changeling in your hero's hero phase. That unit halves his movement value. Another ability is, instead of using the Trickster's Staff, which is his melee weapon, in the close combat phase, you can pick a melee weapon wielded by the target unit and attack with that weapon using its profile. The Changeling is a wizard. He can cast also the Arcane Bolt and Mystic Shields. The Changeling also knows all the spells of any wizard within 9 inches of him. This guy's 140 points. He's quite unique. He's quite cool. He's quite interesting. And I'm sure he can be quite a menace. You can imagine him charging into a bloodthirster and taking his profile and hitting him with his own profile, just to weaken him down to half points. This guy can be useful. I'll have to give him a try, so the jury's out. The next War Scroll is the Blue Scribes. Movement 16, 5 up save, Bravery 10, and 5 wounds. He has a 1-inch range attack with 2 attacks, hits on 5s, wounds on 5s, no rend, 1 damage. Also has his mount that does an attack, 1-inch range, D3 attacks, hits on 4s, wounds on 4s, no rend, 1 damage. This model flies, and it can fly 16 inches. His abilities: roll a dice each time a wizard within 18 inches successfully casts a spell. On a roll of a 4-up, the Blue Scribe knows that spell and can cast it in future turns. Also, once in each of your hero phases, the Blue Scribes can attempt to read from the scrolls of sorcery. You roll a dice. On a roll of a 1, the spell automatically fails. On a roll through 2 through 6, the spell automatically goes off, and your opponent has to dispel it on a roll of a 9. Again, the spell gets cast as long as you don't roll a 1. Any spell you know. That's incredible. Also, the Blue Scribe knows the Mystic Shield. He also knows Arcane Bolt. He also knows his special spell, the Boon of Tzeentch, which goes off on a casting value of 4. It allows you to reroll all failed casting attempts made by Tzeentch wizards within 18 inches of the Blue Scribe for the rest of the hero phase. Now, the Blue Scribe costs 120 points. He seems pretty awesome. I've used him twice. He was super successful because I had mostly a Tzeentch casting army. And it was awesome. After he killed my Lord of Change, my Blue Scribe still knew his spell and still casted it on a 2-up. So I really like this model. He was a lot of fun to play, and I'm going to keep playing him, so he does not suck. The next War Scroll is the Lord of Change. Movement 10, 4-up save, Bravery 10, 10 wounds. His melee weapon is the Staff of Change, 3-inch range with 2 attacks, hits on 4s, and wounds on 2s. Now, as this model takes damage, he will wound on a 3, and then finally he'll wound on a 4 if he takes even more damage, but he starts at wounding on a 2. He has no rend and does 2 damage. Then he has a secondary attack with a 1-inch range, and it starts with 4 attacks, but as he takes damage, it goes to 3, and then it finally goes down to 2. Now, those attacks hit on 4s, wounds on 3s with -1 rend and does 1 damage. This model is the bad boy. He flies, and again flies 10 inches. One of his abilities is whenever he's casting or unbinding a spell, you roll your 2 dice and you match your lowest dice so it matches your highest dice. So whatever the highest dice is, you're rolling some high numbers, let's face it. Also, if he can ever unbind a spell and you roll a 9 or more, you actually learn that spell for the rest of the battle. Now, his command ability: he stretches out his arms, and every Tzeentch demon wizard within 18 inches gets +1 to all his casting attempts. He knows 3 spells. He knows the Arcane Bolt, he knows the Mystic Shield, and he also knows the Infernal Gateway. That's a crazy good spell. Now, here it goes. It casts on a 7 Within 18 inches, you roll 9 dice, and you look at the chart. If he has taken no wounds, then those 9 dice, if you roll a 3 up, you're taking mortal wounds. That enemy unit is taking mortal wounds. And as he gets wounded, it'll go to a 4, and then if he gets wounded even more, the worst it'll get is to a 5. But again, that's 9 dice. That spell is incredible, and they suffer mortal wounds. Now, all of your wizards will know the Summon Lord of Change spell. Now, it goes off on a casting value of 9. You can place a Lord of Change within 18 inches of that wizard, as long as it's 9 inches away from an enemy's wizard. This Lord of Change is 260 points. This is cheap for this model, folks. This model is incredible. He's pretty much always getting his casting. He's always unbiting. People are afraid of him. He's rolling 9 dice, and he's doing 6 mortal wounds on average every single solitary turn. And he's still no chump in combat. He's decent in combat. And he can cast 2 spells a turn. And he gets to, if you get too close in your wizard, he gets to learn your spells. And he also flies 10 inches away. This guy is incredible. You have to give him a try. He's definitely tournament worthy. He does not suck. The last war scroll is the Fate Weaver. Movement 10, 4-up save, bravery 10, and 10 wounds. He has the Staff of Tomorrow, 3-inch range, does D6 attacks, hits on 4s, and wounds on 2s. Now again, the wounding part will get worse as you take damage. It goes from a 2 to a 3, from a 3 to a 4, but it starts at a 2. Now it has -1 to your rend and does 2 damage. The next attack starts with a 1-inch range and starts with 5 attacks. But again, as you take damage, it goes to a 4 and then goes to a 3 is the worst. But again, it starts with 5. Now it hits on 4s, wounds on 3s, does -1 to their rend, and does 1 damage. Now this model flies, and again, flies 10 inches. Whenever you make a casting or an unbinding spell, you take your lowest dice so that it matches your highest dice. Also, when you make a casting or unbinding spell for Fate Weaver, you add 2 to the result of the roll just before rolling the dice. You can correctly, as long as you can correctly spell the name of the spell backwards, out loud, without hesitation or looking it up. Here's the crazy part though. Once per game, you can change the result of a single dice roll to the result of your choosing. Imagine that. Turn 2, you want to go again? Just change it. Change to whatever you want. You need to do 6 wounds to that character? Well, change the dice to 6. Whatever you need to do. You can do it once per game. This is incredible. This is game changing. This model right here. He's awesome. Fate Weaver knows 3 spells and can cast 2 spells in 1 turn. He knows the Arcane Bolt, he knows the Mystic Shield, and he also knows the Gift of Change. And he also knows all the spells of wizards from your army within 18 inches. Again, he knows 3 spells, and then he also knows all the spells of his friendly wizards within 18 inches on top of that. Now, his special spell is called the Gift of Change. Now, that's a casting value of 8, and affects an enemy unit within 18 inches. They suffer a number of mortal wounds shown on the table. Now, the table depends on how many wounds you have. If it starts at D6 mortal wounds, and as you get weaker, it goes from D6 down to D3 down to 1. Now also, if any models were slain by a spell, you can set up a chaos spawn within 3 inches of that unit. This model is added to your army. Now, the Fate Weaver costs 300 points. But again, he can change the result of any 1 dice. He also can cast 2 spells. He also knows all the spells of all your friendly wizards. He also can add +2 to your casting. You just got to learn the spells and read them backwards. I mean, this guy is versatile. He's also decent in combat with a 3-inch range attack. He is my go-to caster. He is my go-to character. He's guaranteeing me turn 2 turns in a row. This is huge. This guy does not suck. He is awesome. So the question is, do Tzeentch Daemons suck? They do not suck. They are awesome. They put out so many mortal wounds from range. They have great shooting attacks. Yeah, they suck in combat. Yeah, if you get to them, you're going to destroy them. And that's why you got to mix your army up just a little bit. Put a little bit of combat in there. But I mean, think about it. You take a Lord of Change, rolling 9 dice, 18-inch range, and then you cast the spell, the Vortex, and that goes off on a 5, and then it's adding +1 to your casting, and you already have +1 to your casting because you're a command ability, and now you're shooting 36 inches, 9 dice. Or you put Fate Weaver on top of that Vortex, and now he can cast all friendly wizards, and he's casting the Lord of Change ability with his 9 attacks, and he's also casting his own ability, which is doing D6, mortal wounds. You're putting out, 12 mortal wounds, a turn, every single turn? And the next turn you do the same thing. You raise your Lord of Change on there, and then you're doing your Lord of Change on 9 dice on the Vortex within 36 inches, and then you're doing your Herald of Tzeentch, you're copying your Herald of Tzeentch with your Fate Weaver, and you're doing D6 mortal wounds, and then another D6 mortal wounds, and then your Flamers are going around shooting within 18 inches and moving and flying within 9 inches. It's incredible, and the battalions, and it's just so much. This army is awesome. It can do a lot, but again, in tournament play, my favorite models are the Lord of Change, the Fate Weaver, the Herald of Tzeentch, and those are my go-to 3, because Fate Weaver can copy 2 spells. So you make him copy the Lord of Change and Fate Weavers, and then after the second turn, you put Lord of Change up on the vortex, so you can double his range and add 1 to his casting. And now you copy the Herald spell, so you're doing 2d6 mortal wounds and another 9 dice mortal wounds, and then that's only, you're talking, that's only what, like 700 points of your army, and then you have a whole bunch of combat squads everywhere, and you're protecting your stuff, and you're doing crazy things, and the Flamers are just so strong. 3 attacks per model, 4 the champion. Yeah, they don't do any rend, but they're doing D3 wounds each. And you keep them close by to your Horde hero, so if they ever kill him, you roll a 6, and then you get 2 more guys back. So there are some things in the Tzeentch Demon Arms that aren't that great, but some things are just super strong, and it's up for you to decide. Again, thank you for listening. This is Dorkdom Gaming. Please like, subscribe, or if you did not like, please dislike. Leave a comment below, and I'll talk to you guys the next one.